Deep diving into Jacksonville's long history of redlining tonight, a racist policy that shaped America's cities and created disparities that still exist today. But even before redlining, Jacksonville created its own map designating where the most undesirable businesses would be located. All Your Side's David Jones sat down with a local architect and urban planner who says correcting racial disparities will mean undoing the geography set in place 100 years ago.
There's a reason that certain neighborhoods look like they look today. You can pour as much money as you want to into a result, but if you don't change the cause, you're not going to alleviate or resolve the issue.
Finding that root cause is a job Jacksonville architect and urban planner Ennis Davis is perfectly suited for.
Understanding zoning and history and the development of the city and the policies we have in place and how they play out over the course of time, that can be a very significant and important tool.
A tool, Davis says, to address the challenges certain communities face: crime, poverty, poor schools, or health disparities. All issues disproportionately impacting Jacksonville's majority black neighborhoods, and many can be traced to a city map dated 1930, the first zoning map in Florida.
By that time, racial zoning had been made illegal. Exclusionary zoning was a way around that. These particular areas were zoned as unrestricted zoning areas because they were black. Unrestricted meant you could put any type of land use there. You could open up a slaughterhouse next to somebody's house. So all the negative things that you didn't want, that kind of set the foundation for what neighborhoods would be redlined in the following decade.
Redlining was a discriminatory practice where government agencies in particular refused to make home loans in black inner-city communities.
Essentially across the U.S., not just Jacksonville, every majority black neighborhood in the city at that point, a U.S. city at that point in time, became red.
The 1957 redlined map of Jacksonville simply reinforced the city's original zoning map, dictating which neighborhoods would see money and investment and which would get nothing.
It starts this pattern of the haves and the have-nots in terms of Jacksonville's neighborhoods and development that would occur over the next 90 years, even up to today.
Davis says understanding some city problems were both structural and deliberate offers a guide to possible solutions.
Understand your history, understand the policies that are put in place and how they played out over time, and you might have to go back and change some of these things in the zoning or your public policies that will lead to different outcomes.
In Jacksonville, David Jones, First Coast News, on your side.